Welcome to Nacho Fitness Coach,
the podcast where fitness is technically the topic, but let's be honest, we get distracted.
I'm Sarah, the fitness expert who actually understands this stuff.
And I'm Kaylee, the beginner who thinks Bulgarian split squats are a hate crime.
Every week, we break down fitness myths, call out internet nonsense, and try to make sense of the chaos.
While also going off on tangents, making bad jokes, and questioning our life choices.
If you're looking for expert advice with a side of whatever Kaylee does here,
or just need a podcast that makes you feel better about your own fitness journey,
you're in the right place.
All right, let's do this. Or, talk about doing this. All right, welcome back to Nacho Fitness Coach. Today, we're super excited because we have a guest.
We do.
We love a guest. Today, we've got Andres Ayesta. He's a registered dietitian, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and the founder of Planos Nutrition. He's also the host of the Nutrition Blueprint podcast, where he breaks down complex nutrition topics into bite-sized digestible pieces. Pun intended. He's the guy who can help you ditch diet culture, stop fearing carbs, and finally understand what the heck a macro is. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to figure out if pre-workout counts as breakfast and if eating a whole pizza is called intuitive eating. Please welcome the man who's here to fix our relationship with food and maybe, just maybe, convince me to eat a vegetable.
Yes. Maybe.
Wow.
Yes.
Love that introduction. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well,
We're
welcome.
excited to have you.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you. So, all of the topics that we brought up in the intro and we talked really quickly before we hit record, this is going to be a really great conversation. And I'm sure we're all going to have lots of nuggets that we're going to get to take away with, especially
nuggets.
So nuggets. Yeah, of course, that would be the one word. There's this ongoing thing. Kaylee does not like vegetables.
I don't.
Really?
I never have. And
So you probably did really well in that carnivore experiment.
That was kind of my favorite thing about it, because you try all these other diets, and I even did a one stint where I tried a vegan thing years ago.
Wait, and is this like a since you were a kid type of thing? Or
yeah, I didn't really. I grew up, my mom, we would have canned vegetables. We really didn't have a lot of actual, I wasn't.
What's wrong with canned vegetables?
Nothing's wrong with them, but that's just all I knew.
It's a texture thing.
Nobody ever put a piece of raw broccoli in front of me growing up. It was all canned green beans or canned corn, or our fridge never had go eat a carrot. So I'm trying. I really am trying.
Are you?
I know you think I'm not, but I really, really am trying.
If it's green, she won't.
Not true.
Really? You won't touch it?
There's a lot of green things I won't touch.
Most of them.
It's interesting because the vegetable kind of issue, it's funny. When I'm working with clients, I always ask them, what's your what's your story behind nutrition? And I go back, what was it like growing up?
Yeah.
And usually the vegetable haters are the ones who have parents who were vegetable pushers.
Yeah. No, that was not the case for me.
You cannot get out of the table until you finish your vegetables.
Yeah.
And I feel those are the ones that grow up to be despise every kind of green.
No, I'm kind of the opposite. I feel I was just really never exposed to real vegetables. But my kids though, my 7-year-old, she loves, any vegetable, which is crazy to me because I don't know. I feel I did try to overcompensate, I guess, when they were little. Look, my kids aren't going to hate veggies, but I still do.
So now you're going to be the vegetable pusher.
You know what? The other day I actually ordered I was supposed to just be a mixed greens bag from Walmart, and they substituted it with collard greens, which I had never had before. And I had them and I hated them.
Have you tried blending the vegetables into a green?
I will blend spinach in with things, but other than that, I'm a work in progress, Well,
we'll see what I can add into maybe your arsenal of loving vegetables that maybe we're in a mission to do and accomplish in here.
For me, a lot of it was learning how to cook vegetables, so I did always have vegetables growing up, but a lot of times mine were the frozen ones or mixed with not the right flavor. I love Brussels sprouts now that I've learned how to roast them in the oven and they can get crispy and really super delicious. But growing up, it was always the frozen Brussels sprouts that just got heated up in the microwave and drizzled with Velveeta. And it's those are two terribly different flavor profiles that don't mix.
Exactly.
You know, so forever, that's what I just thought Brussels sprouts were. But then for me, it was just learning how to cook them. And I love roasting them in the oven. I think that makes a huge difference.
I think another big thing about vegetables is the fact that now that I think about it, I think up until like I was 18, I hated tomatoes. I hated avocados. I still cannot do bananas. I mean, it's a fruit, but there's a lot of things that I just don't like. And I think when I was studying dietetics, I feel like I taught myself to like certain things. And now I'm a believer that if you eat something and you repeat it like so many times, like, and you introduce it like slowly, like even like hidden in certain places, eventually I think you acquire a taste for them. So Kaylee, maybe like that could be maybe there's still hope.
I am working on it right now. I'm doing all of my lunches include baby carrots, raw baby carrots.
There you go.
And I'm doing fine without ranch even.
That's awesome. There you go.
So that's where baby steps. It is
a baby step. That is a very.
But I'm eating a lot more carrots now than I was.
It's good.
You know, so good for me.
That is good. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you. Well, I learned the hard way accidentally that like mushrooms actually give her this like.
No, that's never gonna happen.
Choking like convulsion almost like just even like thinking about it.
Like, yes. You want to throw up type of thing?
Yes,
yeah.
but why?
Really?
What did mushrooms ever do to you?
We gotta go into it. It's a texture thing.
You know, I think I can see that because I think sometimes like mushrooms can be kind of slimy. Like they're cooked certain ways. I mean, I get it. I
honestly,
can see that.
I do not understand how anybody on this green earth eats. I don't understand it. I think everybody's playing a trick on me. I don't think anybody actually eats them.
I do.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
My dad cooks with a thing. Everything he cooks, he adds mushrooms in it.
No.
So, yeah.
Don't invite me over for dinner. Your dad's.
Yeah, I don't think you would like that.
Oh man. Well, I mean, yeah, you are a work in progress. Those are some baby steps, and it's kind of one of those things. So, you know, what would be like one of your number one baby steps? I mean, do you have something that you kind of try to work through with people when you're first meeting them? Like, is it that first step into health, wellness, whatever? Does it vary per person? Or, you know, what does it look like from your perspective? Like, what recommendations do you make for people when they're trying to start making some changes?
So I feel like first is like, like you said, baby steps. And I always ask them to audit really everything of what it's going on in their lives right now, because I think one of the biggest mistakes that most people make when they're starting to make changes in their health and their fitness and their diet is that they're trying to mold themselves into whatever they think the ideal diet, the ideal fitness program needs to be. And in reality, it needs to start with where they're starting with, like themselves, right? So it's like becoming aware of who they are and their habits and things like that, and start to pick one thing and try to do better. So I'll give you an example. This week I was coaching one of my clients who's a dad. He has 4 kids, 45-year-old, and he's struggling. Like, you know, it's been 3 months, and like, you know, a lot of times it's just too much stuff that he has to deal with. So I asked him what is one thing that if you did this week, you're going to feel proud of yourself for, like that you feel like can actually make a dent in your progress. And he said, dude, I just need to drink more water. I was like, that's it. Mm-hmm. That's all we're going to do today. And until you don't master that and you tell me like, dude, I crushed it. I did this at least 4 to 5 days this week. And we kind of gave him some tips and some strategies to do that. Then we're not going to work on anything else. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's a longer route, but I feel like it's the better route because ultimately those things typically tend to stay and to last. Mm-hmm. So for me, I focus not so much on the food or the thing that you need to do, but the habit that is the foundation of what is going to drive you to make the decision to have the vegetable, to eat or to have the water, or to go work out and to exercise. So I think it's not one specific thing. It's just getting the person to ask themselves, because I think coaching is all about empowering people to understand what is it about their lives that needs to change, and for them to choose, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to start to focus on. And then my job as a coach is just to essentially try to like steer the help them steer the ship in the right direction as far as the things that they need to do, and holding them accountable to be able to do that.
Yep, absolutely. And we've talked a lot about that. And I think that's why I always go into like these big, and I've done this my whole life, is where I'll like be like, all right, I'm going to wake up on Monday and I'm going to change everything. I'm going to change my wake up time. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to start working out. My whole life's going to be different. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for anybody. And it never worked. And so I think that was kind of the approach that I took this time. And I've, and it's like you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and I've had different struggles throughout this last couple of years. Sometimes I'll have to go back and be like, I'm not doing great on my water anymore. I was, but I'm not anymore. And even go back and revisit those things. I'm never like in the clear, but just adding on more and more habits, because I fixed my sleep and then worked on my water, and I think nutrition's just always going to be, but that is kind of what I'm focusing on right now, is trying to make it work for my life, because I don't like to cook, and so if I go out and find some diet or a meal plan where it's like, this is what you eat, absolutely not. It's not going to work out. It's like, I'll eat canned tuna, I'll eat egg salad, I'll eat chicken, I'll eat canned green beans, like do those things instead of just, I'm going to go get McDonald's because I want to cook this elaborate, meal that was in my diet.
Yeah. And to be honest, I, as a dietitian, my wife is the big cook here. In fact, she's a recipe developer, so I get to enjoy all her creations. But I am not. Yeah. In fact, I just cook for purposes of fueling my body. So for me, I just go for simple things. In fact, this is a quick tip in here. Like, my current lunch has 3 ingredients, and you'll find them at Trader Joe's. If listeners have a Trader Joe's close by, I always get a salad kit from Trader Joe's. I get the shawarma chicken that they have, and I get frozen rice that they also sell in there. It takes about 5 minutes or maybe like 10 when you're cooking the chicken to assemble an entire meal. That's been my lunch for the past couple months or so. Nice. And I change it up like the typical, the salad kit that I have. For me, I have like I tell my clients and teach them like a rule of 3 when it comes down to the most meals for choosing a balanced meal. It's having a higher or a protein source. And I'm sure you have talked about this a lot, but it's a protein source, is a whole grain type of carbohydrate, ideally, and some form of color, whether it's a fruit or a vegetable or a combination of both. So every single time I'm sitting down to eat a meal, I ask myself whether it's a sandwich, even if I'm like going to Chick-fil-A, even if I'm just having the type of meal that I just talked about, it's like those 3 components. And I try to ensure that every single time I'm having a combination of those things for the most part. And that usually not only keeps me full, but at the same time, it's also something that combines all the nutrients that I feel like I need to have into my diet.
Yep.
I like the simple rule. Yeah. I mean, that is a really easy way to peel back all the layers. I mean, I'm a huge fan of just ingredient-based meals, not.
And I never even thought of that until you told me, when we first started. When
I was coaching clients a lot, like the first thing that so many would ask me is, do you have recipes? Yeah. Do you have recipes? And I'm like, why? That takes so much time. I know.
Hate recipes.
I never even knew that was an option until Sarah. We were doing like in our very first season. Sarah was like, we talked about meal prepping or meal planning or whatever, and she's like, do you try to make recipes? And I'm like, well, yeah. What do you mean?
How else would you make a meal?
She's like, what if you just had chicken and broccoli or whatever? Like, it's just pull it out of the fridge, warm it up,
put it on your plate.
There's your food.
Here you go.
It blew my mind.
Because people are wired to be like, tell me how to cook it. Tell me how to be a recipe. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why are you taking that extra time?
Yeah.
Like,
and it's so much easier to feed my kids now.
Yeah.
I'm like, here's your vegetable, here's your fruit, here's your protein.
Just get your different
I personally think recipes are like for like special occasions on like something different that you want to try. But for me, a recipe, I use it as a base of an idea. Like this morning, for example, because I also cook like my mother-in-law was here the other day, and she was looking at me cooking on a Monday morning because like she stayed the weekend. And she was just telling my wife, it's like, he cooks so fast. It's like, I got no time to lose in here. So I'm cooking like 3-5 different things at the same time. And I get everything done within an hour.
Yep.
And I repurpose what I'm making to different meals. Yeah. Right. So, and I keep it simple. Right. This morning, for example, I had like this pork tenderloin sitting in my fridge. And I'm like, I got to cook this. And I had like this honey. I just sometimes get creative. I was like, okay, I got this like honey like thing in there. I was like, let me kind of find some recipes. Like, well, I was just gonna honey pork tenderloin, and I found something, and I was like, okay, I picked like 3 things of the recipe ingredients, and I just like whip it together, and like that was it, and call it a day, and it was good. I enjoyed it. It was, it was nothing like chef like, but
well, and I think when you start thinking of it more as like fuel, which I, had never really done before, it's fuel. All right, I think it's time for a quick break.
Hey y'all, thanks for listening. This is show producer Audio Allen. While the girls are taking a break, like, follow, and subscribe. And stick around, we'll be right back.
And we're back.
It doesn't need to be some grand, delicious. Like, there's a time and place. You can still enjoy delicious food, but it doesn't need to be every meal of it.
Well, but it can be still delicious. I think it's
for sure,
there's ways in which to make it that way. Yeah.
I save those meals for like when I go to a restaurant that I can just choose anything. If I'm cooking for myself, it's super simple. I always try to have a protein ready to go made in the fridge all the time. And then just grabbing and going the other stuff to kind of like fill out the plate. But yeah, it does make a difference when you just keep it that simple. This rule of 3 or whatever it ends up being, because it just makes it a lot easier to kind of wrap your head around and be like, oh, I can do this. Like, this isn't the super complex thing, And it does, and you know what? Nutrition doesn't have to be your first step though either. I mean, you talked about the water, you brought up sleep, but the very first thing you did is you said, I'm going to do this couch to 5K. Like, you just started moving your body. I feel like that was where you started, and you were like, I found this plan. I'm just going to go do this in the mornings in the country road and like just go out and start moving. And so it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Depending.
See, and that was what was so hard for me to wrap my head around, was that I needed somebody tell me what to do. And that's just not necessarily how it works. You can hire a coach, and you can definitely, there's help along the way for sure. But that's just that with hiring a coach, it needs to be more personalized. There is no thing that you're going to find online that's the perfect nutrition plan, workout plan, whatever. And you got to figure out what works for you.
Have you guys ever heard about the concept of the keystone habit?
No.
Okay. So now that you mentioned the couch, the 5K, one of the things that I have studied so much is 2 things: psychology of change and the science of habits. And one of the things that one of my mentors actually once taught me, he's a mental performance coach for some sports teams in here in the U.S., and he said, you got to start to focus on a keystone habit. And I was like, what is that? It's like a keystone habit is just one specific thing that usually gets everything else to rise up in your life as a result of just this one area that you're doing. And you just simply pick one thing to do and to do well. This is obviously the whole thing with hydration, but now that you mentioned the couch to 5K, I'm sure this is also something that relates. When you started doing that, there's likely chances that you started to pay attention to other things a little bit more intentionally, right? Where you're starting to, I was like, I guess I probably need to have a good breakfast, right? And I probably need to go a little bit earlier to bed if I need to kind of get up earlier to be able to go work out. So what happens as a result of a keystone habit, that you're just so intentionally focused on one thing that as a result, everything else gets better, right? And it's not just in health and fitness. It's, he was sharing like stuff in like, data and research is like, when people focus, for example, on something fitness specific, their finances get better. Why? Well, because I want to eat more at home. So I don't want to spend as much out. And then like your relationships get better. So, but then when you're trying to do all things at once, which is what we call that all or nothing thinking, right? It's like you're putting so much energy towards so many different things that you end up not necessarily giving your all to everything. And that's when usually people give up, because they're expecting, or they're having this expectation of something that needs to happen. And they feel like they have to really check all these boxes. And if they don't really check them all off, then they might as well just not check any at all. And it doesn't make sense, right? Like that's like kind of like either you sprint a marathon or you just don't even start. That's honestly, most people would say, oh, that doesn't make sense. Well, but that's the way we live our lives. And the thing about all or nothing thinking is that we apply it to the different parts of our life. I don't have a problem with that in my nutrition and my health and my fitness, but I may have an all or nothing thinking issue with other areas of my life, right? Work, for example, like, sometimes I need to check all the boxes and I'm trying to work through that in my life. But I think this is one of the biggest issues that I see a lot in the health and fitness space. And that's the part of it that we try to sort of focus on changing. And a Keystone Habit idea, that's a really good place to start to really thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's very true.
It is absolutely true, because it just takes that, well, baby steps. I mean, that's kind of the theme, right? It just takes that, finding that one thing that you care enough about to want to make a change with, because it does have that kind of waterfall effect then onto other things, you know. But if you don't find that one thing that really matters to you to be consistent with it over time, the rest of the stuff's really not going to matter. Or, you know, you can try to do the other things, but if it doesn't matter enough to you, then it's not going to help kind of create that effect at all. So, you know, just find that one thing.
Yeah.
Find that one
and challenge yourself to do it for X amount of days. Like, that's a part of it that I think people sometimes will listen to this and it's like, okay, but then they start doubting themselves and they start to think like, this is not going to be enough.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm going to do that. It's like, but what happened? what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're still going to be stuck in the same place, finding the thing that you need to do.
Yep.
So might as well just spend the next 7 days going on a 5-minute walk every morning. Right? Like, that's maybe one thing that you want to start to do. 5 minutes.
Yep.
It's not crazy. And see what happens. Worst case scenario, you hated it and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do this. Okay. Well, at least you did something.
Yep.
Or you absolutely loved it. And then 5 turned into 10 and now turned into 20. And then before you know it, you're, you know, signing up for a 5K.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yep. All the days keep piling together. You know, I had wanted to start doing, like, you know, get up in the morning and go for a walk, you know, especially like if the weather's nice, or just get body moving, or, you know, different coaches will have different recommendations for that. And I was like, okay, I like that. Like, get up and just get out, get some fresh air, get your body moving a little bit. And so last summer I was walking, we live very close to our school. And so I walk a block over and was doing like a morning weights class. And so I just didn't even think about it, but I spent all summer walking to that and then walking home or whatever else. And then school year started and I wasn't doing that anymore. And I didn't realize how much I was missing that until then I started picking up another morning weight class in January. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've really missed these like morning walks. It was like, I had done it for 2 months. It was part of my day because I had to get there. And then I stopped because the school year started, my routine changed, and I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started doing it again then too, because I think that's also something to like stop and think and consider a little bit. Seasons change, times change, school, you know, routines will change. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to give this up now. Like, I really enjoy
I think the concept of getting outside first thing in the morning is so like underrated, underappreciated, and like just glazed over. Because we were doing that last summer. We moved all of our weights out. We live on a farm, so we moved all of our weights out to the shop, and just like being out in the sun when the sun's coming up, it changes the tone of your whole day.
Oh yeah.
And then, you know,
100%.
we live in the Midwest, so winter, you know, sets in and you stop doing that. And how much I'm so excited. Like, it's warming up here. I'm so excited to get back
to start that up again.
Being outside in the morning.
You probably don't have to worry about that much in Florida.
Yeah, that's exactly. But so for us, it's weird because it's like we're the opposite, right? Like, when you guys like want to go out, like, I want to stay in because summers in here are miserable. So, but that's honestly, I lived in Indiana. It's actually what I went to school. So like, I remember like, you know, those like winters. It's like, it's hard. Right?
It's hard because then you get used to something. It's like a morning walk or an evening walk or something, and then it's just like ripped from you.
Yeah.
There were a few mornings.
I remember those days.
Yeah. There were a few mornings walking over to the school in January where it was like -30 wind chill. Yeah. And I was like,
oh, wow.
My face is frozen.
Yeah.
But so if I wouldn't have had that reason to go there, I wouldn't have done the walk. But I did it because I also refused to just hop in my car and drive a block. Right. So I'm like, I'm walking regardless of how cold it is. But every time when I would leave class and walk back home, I'm like, it's cold, but it feels like
it feels
good.
I think it
be
regulates
outside.
the nervous system, and it helps. I think it helps with sleep too. I think being outside when or around the time that the sun comes up actually helps you sleep better at night.
Does it?
Yes, look it up.
You think?
Google it.
Google it.
Ask him.
Yeah.
Kaylee sometimes makes up stuff.
No, it's true.
She's like, I read it on one.
It's your circadian rhythm.
I know it is your circadian rhythm, but is that really tied to the sun rising?
Yes, it does.
Well, at least like from like from like sun exposure, it's important to help you kind of correct or sort of like get that in sync. But yes, like at least from the sun exposure is very important for that purpose. And for that reason, which is actually why I recommend. I call it like an afternoon coffee, and it's not quite coffee. It's actually just sun exposure, 5 to 10 minutes, like after lunch, to go outside and expose yourself to the sun. It's been shown to actually improve your ability to fall asleep at night because it's increasing vitamin D production. So, which is actually one of the most important things that I feel like I talk to all people about. In our programs, we actually do labs, and that's one thing I always want to make sure I'm looking at. And I would tell you that 4 out of 5 people that I test, they always have either a vitamin D deficiency or they just they have an insufficiency, which means their levels are okay, but they're not ideally where they need to be.
Yeah.
And that stuff can affect your sleep.
So in Florida, you have 4 out of 5 people that are vitamin D deficient.
Yes. In fact, I am.
We are screwed then here in Nebraska. If they're in Florida and they're not getting enough sun.
Well, but here's the thing. It's not just about the sun, right? So there's people that are, for example, I'm Hispanic. Usually African Americans and Hispanics tend to like their ability to produce vitamin D from sun exposure. That conversion is not as good as sometimes Caucasians. Now, you guys, on your other hand, you're just at a higher altitude, or you live not altitude, but just at a higher latitude. Sorry. And because of that reason, you don't get the same strength of sun exposure. So it's like we're sort of like even when it comes on to that. So to my surprise, when I got my first ever vitamin D test, and I'm living in Florida, this is a time that I was going to the beach every weekend, like a lot of sun. And I'm like, I'm vitamin D deficient. And this is crazy. So I have to constantly supplement with vitamin D to get my needs met.
Yep.
So that's another, I do get my sun exposure. It's still important, but I personally have to supplement with it just to ensure my levels remain normal all year round. Some people that I work in the northern states like you guys, then I would notice that usually around summer, their levels get corrected. I recommend people to test their vitamin D every 6 months or so, particularly if you live in northern states, just to ensure that it's always remaining anywhere between 40 to 50. The thing with vitamin D, though, it's like when you go to a doctor will tell you that, if it's like 30 and if it's 30 and 35, it's fine.
Normal.
It's good.
Yeah, it's within normal limits.
It's normal. And then this is the thing with like with blood tests and doctors, or at least most of the ones I've seen, is that they just simply look at those charts or those numbers and they're like, okay, as long as it hits the mark, it's perfect. But is that optimal?
Right.
They don't really talk about optimal. And that's another thing that I really try to kind of get people to understand when I'm doing a lot of this testing with them so that I can give them the right recommendations.
Do you have all your clients do blood work?
The program that we offer, I started doing that earlier this year because I was chasing down my clients to get them to do that with their doctors.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of resources where I can just request that for them and they just go whatever they are and they can go to a lab and they can get their lab drawn.
I don't think a lot of people know that you can just go, I've done it. You can just go in and order your own blood work.
Yeah, you don't even need a person like me to order it. Like you can go to Life Extension is a supplement company. They have their own kind of like lab section where you can just purchase a lab thing. And
it's a couple $100 or whatever. But like we just went to the hospital here and you just say, and they ask, what doctor ordered this? And you say, me, I'm not a doctor. But.
Well, and this is the thing about, this is something I always like to talk about when it comes on to labs, which is when you go to a doctor, you don't get a full gamut of testing. And the reason for that, it's because of insurance. And the reason for this is because of the fact that they cannot bill for it if you don't really give them a reason to code you for a specific diagnosis. So I'm going to give you an example. And this is gonna be funny, but when I go to my doctor, right, and I need to, so I don't have to pay for this stuff out of pocket. If I want to look up my hormones, I need to give a few little white lies.
Yeah.
So, for example, I tell my doctor, I said, "Hey, doc, I'm having some libido problems. I may not be having that, right? But I still say that, so that maybe we just need to test your testosterone levels." It's like, Bingo. Okay,
Yep.
thanks. Yeah, probably. I need to take a look at that.
Yep.
It's just simply so that he could put a code in there that says, something, because I have to code for that. I do take some insurance clients, and I have to code for certain things so that when they submit this stuff for insurance, it gets covered.
Yep.
So I need to tell my clients, literally, you have to do some white little lies.
You got to play the game.
So that you got to play the game so that your doctor can send you the stuff. And for women, it's a nightmare because I want to look at your estrogen, all these different things, and they're not doing some of the testing. And what really makes me so mad is whenever we get this, like, she's like, oh yeah, my doctor did all my panel. I was like, okay, let's look at your thyroid.
All right, I think it's time for a quick break.
Find our Nacho Fitness Coach page on Facebook with username Nacho Fit Coach, where you can like, follow, and share our content. And we're back.
And they did like a TSH, which is like just like one single marker. It's like, where's the rest of it? It's like, oh no, he looked at that and he said like, there's not need for anything else. I'm like, oh my God.
Yep.
So, and the thing about it is I'm so livid about this whole idea. It's because of the fact that whenever you get your labs done here, most doctors, like, you'll just simply, they'll call you if something is off, but then you won't hear anything else. You won't even see those numbers until you call and you're like, can I get a copy of my labs?
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like it should not be that way. I feel like
even then, when it comes back from the lab, it will have the within normal limits range. But you're right, how often that normal is not optimal. And really what people are looking for is that optimal range, not just that borderline concern, And so, and every lab will have that within normal limits range, slightly varied. And so it all just depends on how you're looking at stuff. And I feel like this is an area too that gets heavily underestimated when you're looking at your whole picture of overall health is just all of the hormones, everything that they can test for. Like in our household, we didn't do it. My husband did. It's like a functional health, like online thing, it was like 1,000 labs or whatever. All the markers were whatever. And he had to drive an hour to go to a specific lab that he could schedule with for them to actually like draw it. Cause I think that's the nearest like Quest one we have to hear or something. And, they sent back pages upon pages upon pages and had it reviewed. And it's like, that's truly what blood work is. Yeah. Literally getting it to that level of detail. And you know what? Your blood work doesn't lie either.
Right.
Like it truly paints that picture of what's going on. Your hormones matter. All those deficiencies with your vitamins matter. What's the true picture of what's going on?
And then you can take that and go beyond, a daily multivitamin. Like there are things that you need that I might not necessarily need. Or I found out the same thing when I did blood work. I was really deficient in vitamin D. And so, boom.
Yeah.
I guess I need to supplement.
It's a very important area that we have to really focus on. And I think we have to advocate for ourselves here.
Absolutely.
And I think this is why we're kind of, there's a bit of transition into just more preventive health. And that's what that is all about. And this is why I personally now, with most of the people that come into our programs, it's built into it. It's a requirement. You're going to go get lab work done so that I can see what's going on. I call it like, let's look under the hood.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm going to put them in this like crazy supplement regime, because that's the other part is like a lot of these like lab like deficiencies and things like that sometimes get corrected by lifestyle and nutritional changes. Yep. But at least what the baseline is. I have a client in Boston who like his HDL, which is his good cholesterol, was super low. And like I literally just sent him his labs back just now. And he's like, look at these numbers that actually went up. Right. But then I noticed like his testosterone levels are still a little bit lower. So then at this point, we can just take more aggressive measures, like more supplementations that can boost some of that. So then it really gives you a bigger picture.
Yes.
And he has not stepped into a doctor's office, so far. So and we're actually kind of correcting these things without a medication and without anything like that, Yeah.
Well, I think we've just been so conditioned to think that doctors know everything and doctors know what's best. But, that's kind of been my overall theme the last couple of years. Is like, nobody's coming to save you. Figure this shit out for yourself. Nobody.
Well, like, 10 years ago, I had a bunch, not to the extent that I think it's available now, but a lot of this lab work done and learned that I have the genetic gene mutation of the MTHFR.
Right.
And
my wife does too.
Yeah, I only have one. My husband has both. And so like my body doesn't process folic acid. Well, what's in most multivitamins? It is the synthetic form folic acid.
Yep.
And my body does not process that because I have that gene mutation. And so it's really hard then to comb through supplements.
Yeah. But if you didn't know that,
but if I didn't know that,
like, oh, vitamins are vitamins.
yeah,
whatever.
nope. And so like I have to find the one that's got folate, not the folic acid, and that helped through pregnancies and things like that I never would have known.
Yep. We found out the hard way. We actually went through 3 miscarriages before we had our son. And it was not until like almost the third until like, we just decided to change doctors because the doctor we went just said, it's normal. Like it happens until we went to a fertility clinic and we found out she has a MTHFR gene and also some other stuff with blood clotting factors, which were explaining what was happening. So, and once we corrected that, went on like, changing her like multivitamin, she went on like a gluten-free diet, changed a lot of different things. We conceived our son and, she had complicated yet successful pregnancy. So, that's what it's being a self-advocate, because if we don't have to try to go our ways to try to find what was going on, we would never have had our son. So,
Well, and it goes back to the thing, like maybe medical events like that are common, but common doesn't always mean normal.
No.
Right. And so you also can't just chalk that up of like, oh, well, this is just, it's like, not necessarily.
I think for women specifically, and I get very passionate about just the topic of miscarriages and trying to conceive in general, because I have some experience there, but it's a wide sweeping, these things happen, and like, that's what you're told. And that's not necessarily always the case. When you're having multiple miscarriages or ongoing problems with fertility, that's not necessarily normal. And take it upon you can take it upon yourself to dig deeper and figure out what's going on with my body. Not just this just happens sometimes.
Yep. But it is true though. Like, just because you know what your blood work is, what things are, you're right. It doesn't necessarily automatically mean all of a sudden now you're going to have to pop 100 pills of all these supplements and correct everything at once. Cause you're right. It also too, if you just focus on maybe the lowest hanging fruit, some nutrition and exercise differences. Yeah.
Cause a lot of times it's not a lot. I mean, I have my supplement stack at this point is, I don't know, 6-7 pills maybe.
Yeah. But it didn't even have to start there, right? I mean, you start moving your body.
That's kind of the point
your
I've gotten
nutrition.
To, but it's just these are the things, these are the areas that I needed to help a little bit, and that's going to change.
I do think there are. Yeah, I do think there are certain. I have like, and I can share this with you guys because I think there's like key supplements that I feel most people could benefit from. That, in a way, they cannot fully get through diet, no matter how healthy their diet is. Which I think everybody could benefit from. Like my typical arsenal for supplements on most people include most of them vitamin D upon testing. Most people can benefit from omega-3 fatty acids, good source ones. I'm a big fan of companies like Nordic Naturals. It's a triglyceride-based omega-3. So huge fan of that. And getting something that has over 1,000 or 2,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA, those are super important to have. And sometimes a very broad spectrum multivitamin just to fill gaps. I think it's helpful. Most people can benefit from that. It doesn't hurt. And in fact, it can probably improve in many different areas.
Yeah.
I actually have been recommending as part of my 4th supplement, because I'm seeing so much data on it, not just for performance benefits. The creatine is one of my top ones that I feel every women and men should be taking at this point because of all the benefits. It's been heavily studied since the 90s as one of the most researched supplements for performance benefits, body composition, strength. And now there's so much stuff coming around cognitive benefits, memory enhancement, decrease risk of depression, or like lesser the symptoms. Like there's so many benefits. So that's now in our household. It's like, that gets like, ordered on recurrent.
I just saw something
from
about
Amazon.
creatine that like to get the cognitive benefits, it needs to be like at least 10 milligrams.
10 grams. So
Or grams.
5 grams is like it's a sort of a nice main in dose, but the advantage of creatine is the fact that you can definitely do a higher dose. And there's absolutely, because many people typically get a little concerned about kidneys, and the amount of safety data on creatine and kidney health, and people that are like healthy, they have healthy kidneys, you would probably need to consult a provider on if you have like non-healthy kidneys. But for most people, it's actually very safe to going up to like even up to 20 grams. But 10 grams is actually that I usually take about 10 grams for that purpose, so that it hits all those different areas. So you can do 5 to 10. It's really what I would recommend. And a creatine monohydrate, that's the other part too. I tell people, don't fall for like all these fancy creatine alkaline and like this is a better absorption. It's like, no, none of that stuff has like the level amount of research. It's just marketing at this point.
Well, and it does go to show that how much everything does continue to change and evolve, and research is done in new ways. Because if you would have even asked me like 3 or 4 years ago if I felt like creatine was necessary, just because it was so heavily in like all the performance stuff, I was like, no, focus on these other things first. Like you're not going to get the benefit, because that was the information we had then. This is how much more has now come out just over the last few years that we know about like the general health and wellness of it. And so it's
like creatine was the one, and I take it regularly now, but it was it's so silly, because it was one thing that I was like, before I started taking it, I was like, I need to look more into this. I used to like drink Four Loko and Mountain Dew all day. Like what? And I'm worried about
Four Loko.
See what I'm dealing with here? This is what we've got.
And I'm like, I should probably look into this.
If you're a Four Logos person, I know you had a wild ride. For sure.
But that is actually kind of an interesting point, because it is
for
funny.
some reason it felt to me like I don't know.
It's funny how people do pick and choose their little wormholes like that, though, a little bit, because you're like, wait.
I mean, I used to rip Marlboro Reds right after I'd get out of the tanning bed.
Yeah, you did.
So that's the problem that I have right now with the wellness industry, which is, and that can be a whole topic, but is the fact that it's, people are so like focused on, I call it like, the small stones, the things that do not matter as much as the bigger things. So there's like the moms or the dads that are just like, I only feed organic to my kids, or like, it needs to be gluten free and stuff like that. But you see them on the weekends and they're like, like drink after drink or different things like that. So it's like, you got to put things into like a balance. And this is why for me, it's like, I don't really like to kind of create this like massive, polarized like type of, in fact, you look at my content and it's like, it's nothing sexy. It's nothing, anything crazy. Like you see this like big, massive influencer sharing, carnivore and all these different things. And because that's kind of what sells people, right? It's like, whoa, this sounds like it's extreme. So I feel like I need to be attracted.
It needs to have a name. Everything needs to have a name, and it really doesn't.
Yeah.
So right now, then, your nutrition is heavily based on whole foods, nutrient dense, kind of very simple, following your rule of 3, right? But I mean, it sounds like from before we hit record, like you're about ready to kind of venture on a change in the name of science. So, which I kind of picture the Fit to Fat to Fit documentary here, or like the Super Size Me, where like, okay, we're going to kind of go through this. So, okay. So share with it what your plan is. And then, I mean, how did you come to this realization that like you were going to put yourself through all of this?
Yeah. So I'm doing a carnivore experiment for people that want to know, what this is all about. And there's a story behind this. So back in 2017, I did a ketogenic diet for a whole year. I was working at a facility at the time that was doing a lot of research in neurological conditions in keto. And I was really interested in it. And I was coaching people, or I was told I needed to start coaching some of the patients and some of the people that are coming into the facility on ketogenic dieting. So for me, I needed to understand what that was like. So I decided to do it. And I went and embarked on a ketogenic diet for an entire year. I gained 15 pounds on it, not by choice, right? So that taught me an important lesson, which is you definitely need to watch your calories, because all I did back then was I ate lots of cheese, lots of bacon, lots of eggs, and a lot of keto-friendly foods, right? Because this is a time that keto was starting to kind of become mainstream. Mm-hmm. So I learned important things about that, and that completely changed the trajectory of the way I actually managed nutrition, because in 2 months I lost the 15 pounds by just simply became aware of my macros and my calories, and I just literally was eating carbs. So that really taught me some important lessons. So not too long ago, well, I guess I started seeing a lot. You guys have seen a lot of the hype in carnivore diets. You probably have talked about this in the past. So I did a video on YouTube about it, and people grilled me. They're saying you've never done this before, so you don't understand that, you don't know exactly how this feels, and yada, yada, yada. And you're like, you know what? And I literally responded to this guy. It's like, I'll take you up on this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a carnivore experiment. And this is where the decision was made, because I haven't really done anything like this. Now, here's my thought process. When people share all these incredible magical benefits from, I'm curing autoimmune diseases to losing the 60 pounds to I can now see unicorns, type of is there some crazy stuff?
My ankle was broken and now it's not anymore.
And now it's healed, right? So I'm okay, I need to try to understand this a little bit better, because my hypothesis is most people that embark on this and they go on their keyboard, wars with people on the internet are usually people who started their diet from a very, very, excuse the language, shitty diet from the very start, or the very beginning place. So they're going from processed, ultra processed, poor sleep and all these different things. And now they're making this 360 change in their life. So clearly, is it really the fact that you're eating a buttload of meat and butter, or is it the fact that you're just not eating like an asshole anymore?
Yep.
Right?
No, you're absolutely right.
I think it's maybe time for a little quick ad break.
For more content, follow us on TikTok at Nacho Fitness Coach. Okay, we're back.
Yeah, so that was, so my thought was, okay, this is probably why this is happening. Yeah. So I was like, okay, how can I put that to the test? I was like, well, what if because for me, my approach to health and nutrition, it's flexibility. I like the 80-20, 70-30 rule, where 70% of everything I eat is I try to make it more wholesome, fruits, vegetables, lean meats, but then I have my fun. You guys heard me talking about the fact, I'm having some Venezuelan rum. This is where I'm from. And I had some pizza with my son just earlier today, right? So I have flexibility, and that to me, it's a way of living life and I enjoy it. So I thought, okay, what if I try to go in a Whole30, Whole Foods type of diet, very, very rigidly, because if I transition from that to a carnivore, right, will I see unicorns, right? Will I have all these incredible benefits as a result of that? And then I'm not just going to do the diets. I'm going to literally test everything. So this is going to be a full-blown research, N=1 experiment. In fact, I met with the research team that I used to work out with, and they have a DEXA scan. So I'm going to be doing, so the experiment is going to consist of the following. It's going to be, I'm going to do a week of testing. So I'm going to do a DEXA scan. For people that don't know what a DEXA scan is essentially a body composition analysis, pretty fancy. It's like an MRI. So I'm going to do a DEXA scan, a metabolic analysis. So I'm going to, plug myself into a tube to figure out exactly what my metabolic rate is. I'm going to do a VO2 max test. 3RM, which is a 3-rep max performance test on bench press and deadlift. I'm going to be doing lab work. So I'm going to look at inflammatory markers like blood glucose, all those different things. So that's going to be my first point. I'm going to do that. Then it's 30 days of a calorie controlled, protein controlled. I'm insane, by the way. So 30 days of calorie control, protein control, Whole30, right? So very minimal processed, whole foods, lean meats, vegetables, fruits, all that kind of stuff, right? And then afterwards, I'm going to retest. I'm going to see the results. but I'm going to have a week where I'm not going to track anything. And this is something that one of the research guys actually told me. It's like, you got to test what it's a week would be like in terms of hunger levels and hunger scale for real world application. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, not everybody's going to be tracking their calories and protein to the teeth for 30 days. The reality is they want to see what happens if they just simply eat like this ad libitum, which means they just eat based on their hunger cues. So I'm going to do that and just simply going to report my experience. So that's the first phase. And then it goes through what we call a washout period. And research, that means like you have to really like go back to your normal rhythm of things so that the effects of the previous diet that you tried, they're not necessarily kind of transitioning over to the next. So I'm going to go through 2 weeks for going back to my normal type of rhythm of living. So I'm going to eat normal, not track any calories, just eating the way I do, and then retest again and starting 30 days with the same amount of calories and the same amount of protein, but then in this case, following a very strict carnivore diet, which is going to be composed of a lot of meat, some organ meats. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to do the Liver King stuff, you know, bull testicles and all. No, I'm going to eat just, you know, just meat, chicken, fish, you know, butter, like all eggs, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to retest in the same week of eating according to my hunger level. So it's going to take about, give it or take, almost like 3 months. And then we're going to see what happens. And I'm just going to document the whole experience. And,
are you going to do this on like on Instagram, like in real time? Because I've been following you on Instagram and I would love to follow this because I'm super interested.
My goal is doing that. Like this today, for example, I recorded the first YouTube video that is going to be like, this is what I'm doing. So sharing exactly what I'm doing right now. This starts on May 19th.
Okay.
So I am, you know, gearing up for that.
Awesome.
So I'm going to do the testing before. So I'm going to be sharing all that kind of stuff with people. And it's going to be pretty fun to watch. And I feel like I was almost closer to like backing out on this because as you can see, it's pretty insane. And then it's like, I've been already on like 5 podcasts talking about the fact that I'm doing this. It's like,
now you're in it.
I cannot back out at this point. So, but really my test is like, it's just to show the world, like it's, you know, and again, don't get me wrong. If I notice like, you know, something crazy, I do expect I'm going to feel better on a carnivore diet, just like you probably did also, Kaylee, in terms of like the energy.
In some ways,
like that. Yeah, you do feel better because you're entering into a state of ketosis.
Well, like you just called me out directly because I definitely was a person who went from eating shit.
Well, yeah.
And then
I did not know if like
and then straight into like a certain diet. And obviously like you're gonna feel the difference in very big ways.
Yeah. So well that's the plan.
I love it. I'm excited. I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna be watching for sure. And my husband's he kind of went off it for a while and he did strict carnivore for a while. And honestly, he looks great. But kind of same thing. He went from not eating great to the strict diet. But he kind of yo-yos. He'll do like strict carnivore and then like more ketovore and then, you know, and then he'll just eat like crap again for a few weeks and then start the cycle over. But I mean,
it works for him. So for me, it's like I'm diet agnostic. I always like say that to people. It's like, you know, I want you to do the diet that supports you the best and that you can sustain.
And it's okay to try things, I think, you know, and like we said earlier, like if it, you know, I'm like, if it has a name, it's probably, you know, this gimmick or whatever, but that's kind of what I do. Try something.
How is carnivore? I don't understand what ketovore is versus carnivore.
Ketovore is, I think you can do vegetables.
You can do vegetables. So keto is like a regular ketogenic diet. So you're just, you keep your carbs under around like, you know, 50 to 60 grams total. So you can still do like most vegetables, even like some like low carb fruit like berries and stuff and still maintain a level of quote unquote ketosis, which is what people are like aiming towards doing a lot of these diets, right? Enter into a state where your body switches like gears in terms of the way its metabolism, it's composed, and it starts to use fat as a main source of fuel. Now, what people get wrong about this is the fact that they think it's just their body fat. It's like it starts to use fat. You're consuming fat. It starts to break down that fat you consume from the food into ketone bodies, which are also used by your brain as a source of energy. So point in case I gain 15 pounds of keto because yes, my body was using fat, but I was definitely eating way too much fat.
Right.
So what happens with the extra fat that my body was not using? It was being stored, So that's the reality.
Why? Well, I don't know. I'm missing the point on the blending of the words. Like, why is it not either carnivore or the ketogenic diet? Like, what makes it ketovore?
I don't know. I didn't make the rules.
Is it a thing though? Like officially, or did you make that up?
No, I didn't make it up.
A ketogenic diet is just simply the definition of it is it's a diet that forces the body to use ketone bodies as the main source of fuel. So carnivore is just an extra, like it's a type of ketogenic diet that is a lot more aggressive because you're eliminating all plant-based foods or plant foods from your diet, right? So which is obviously like something that brings about some risks when it comes onto your gut because you're getting absolutely zero fiber. So that's one of the things I'm going to be reporting on around this. But ketogenic diets is any type of diet that forces the body to use ketones. So when people say ketovore, it's just a way to say like I eat keto. Like I think that's just like honestly that's a slang term. That's not a real thing. I think it just started coming around whenever like people started talking carnivore. So it's like ketovore. Like, that's not.
It's a buzzword.
It's just, like,
Apparently,
buzzword.
I just don't keep up with these diet buzzwords.
I will say the one silver lining that came from me trying the carnivore diet was there were times, and I love meat, so that's why I was like, maybe this is something that can work for me. But I got to a point where I was like, I would kill for a vegetable. I honestly, I got to that.
There we go.
Well, because when you are
we need
only
to get you to do carnivore,
right?
Yeah.
I might need to try it again. And then there's pro tip: you can eat pork rinds. That's like the only crunchy food that you can have when you're on carnivore diet. But yeah, I was like, give me broccoli, give me Brussels sprouts, give me something that has like, I can like crunch with my teeth.
All the rest of this just all
because you can't you don't realize how like chewy
bacon.
I definitely when I was doing keto, I definitely missed like a fruit, like honestly, when I was like super aggressive with it. So I do remember that.
So maybe I just need to go
only for 30 days, guys, like because I don't want to do a whole year-long experiment on this. Definitely not worth it for me.
30 days is plenty.
Maybe I just need to go on like another 30-day carnivore and just to like ramp up my appreciation again for vegetables maybe.
Hey, you know what, if that's your small step, if that's what works for you, then
or I could just suck it up and just eat my veggies.
Well, you can do with me. You want to join in, and
I might.
what happens?
Don't threaten me with a good time.
It's like, okay, Andres is on day one, so I need to do day one, and I'm gonna try to share like what I'm eating. So
listen,
feel free
just
to
follow his plan.
If there's one thing about me, like I'll F around and find out. Like that's a good time.
Listen, anyone can do anything for 30 days.
For sure.
I do believe that.
I think I made it. I think I did 3 weeks on carnivore, but I would have done better, but Christmas came.
Right, which is tough to get through that with, like all the baked goods and everything. So, yeah, well, I can't wait to watch this journey. This is going to be really interesting to see how all of the kind of
I'm excited.
all the tests come out from the beginning to end. I mean, I've always appreciated the Whole 30 just because I'm like, what's wrong with eating whole foods for 30 days? Like, that's a good, that is a
Whole 30
good
in itself, I think. That's a cult. I think they're all kind of cults. You got to be careful you don't accidentally. You always got to be mindful of not accidentally joining a cult.
It's a marketing thing for sure. But I find little wrong with that, honestly, just because I'm like, you're just eating whole foods.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's not anything other than, I mean, they're not telling you how much of what. You're not cutting out.
Itself is very, very
it's like
strict.
they were geniuses. Whoever came up with Whole 30 were geniuses because they literally marketed and sold the idea of just eating the way that people are supposed to be eating.
Right. Yes. And so you're like, that's impressive. I mean, really. But so like, there's actually like out of all of the diets out there, that is probably the one where I like, don't really have an issue with. I mean, honestly, because it's like that should be normal eating.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, it's just like when you look at the Mediterranean diets, which are like when you look at diets,
which you never hear anything bad
that,
about Mediterranean, right?
No, because that's the one. Mediterranean diets are the ones that stand the test of time because that's the way people live. Like that's the way people eat in like some of these like Eastern countries or like at least in Europe. So it's like, this is like not a diet for them. It's like, this is how they normally eat.
Yep.
But technically that's pretty like heavy on whole foods. It's like a whole 30 for the most part. So, I mean, when you look at the rankings of diets across the years, it always wins.
Mediterranean.
The
funny thing about
like the one that is considered diet.
The carnivore diet or paleo even is like when people start talking about we need to be eating like our ancestors ate, you know, how people, you know, ate thousands and thousands of years ago. Well, also people only lived till they were 30.
I said that today. I was like, people need to understand that like back in like the 1800s or even in our ancestors, like whenever like we were like near monkeys, like we were not living more than 20 years, 30 years.
And like also,
okay, you want to eat?
Also,
like?
people used to die from like diarrhea. So
yeah. Yeah, so I hate when people use that as their claim to. In carnivore, it's all about like, oh, like, you know, lions and all these, like, you know, we're not designed, our bodies are not designed to digest plants and blah, yada yada. And I'm like, oh my god,
I love it, love it.
Well, this is gonna be a really great experiment to have a front seat to watch kind of how this also. I'm super interested in how the labs come back. The DEXA scan comes back. Like, I mean, you're talking mostly about food, but like throughout all those different stages, are you going to have like a workout routine that's going to be consistent through all of it? Or are you just going to say, nope, we're focusing?
I'm going to keep the same workouts that I do. So I do a bit of a hybrid. I call it like, you know, functional bodybuilding in a way. So it's a little bit of like, you know, CrossFit style workouts. And then I also do just regular, you know, functional training, bodybuilding type of workouts. So I'm not going to do any type of program because I just want to keep that the same way in both type of scenarios. And I think that works for me right now. So, but I'm going to be doing some performance testing just so I can understand if my strength gets affected, improved or reduced as a result of doing some of those things. So that's what the training is most likely going to look like.
Yeah, good.
And I'm also going to be, I wear a Whoop. So this is like a tracker. So I'm going to be looking at my sleep, and this is like a 24/7 thing. So, you know, my HRV, my recovery markers, and all those different things like that too, which is also going to be pretty interesting to test as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, I cannot wait. I mean, I definitely feel like you are welcome to come back on after all of this said and done and share kind of the results again and just kind of talk us through how it all went. I mean, you're obviously going to have it out on social media too, but I mean, this would be a great to be continued kind of conversation because I just think it's going to be a really interesting experiment. Yeah. So, you know, I
look forward to it, and I look forward to sharing my results for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I mean, I feel like we didn't even get to talk about your podcast, but your podcast also seems interesting. So people can just go listen. Here's what we'll do. We'll link everything in our show notes. Yep. People can figure out how to find you that way, your Instagram, your podcast link, anything else that you want us to be sure and put in there.
No, I think the best way is honestly for people to come and watch my journey, and then they can learn in the process who I am, you know, what I do, and, you know, all the things about my life as far as, you know, how I help people or like the stuff that I offer and things like that. So more than happy to share anything like that. And Instagram is the best place for me where you can literally get connected with me because I manage that myself.
Awesome.
So.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. We'll link it all in the show notes. Find it there. We definitely appreciate having you on. This has been a really great conversation. And until next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to head over to our Instagram at Nacho Fitness Coach and let us know how you feel about the topic. Do you love it or hate it?
Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening. And if you like our podcast, leave us a rating. See you next time.
You've been listening to Euphony Innovatives Sonified.